Hello everyone, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are tuning in from this crazy world we're living in right now. I would like to say hello to the participants in this Zoom meeting. Thank you for joining us. I would also like to say hello to those watching our video online on YouTube. So without any further delay, I would like to invite MORTEN RONDE to switch on his camera and microphone.
And my camera should be on.
Yes, it's on. Hi, MORTEN. How are you? How are you? Good.
Okay,
yeah. So I will let you start this mini meetup for which you have 1.5 hours time. If anyone would like to get involved in the subjects, just send a message to MORTEN or myself, so you can switch on your camera and microphone to also take part in the discussion. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sultan, and good morning to everyone. If this panel looks a bit like a déjà vu, you're absolutely correct. We had this panel a while ago, and we thought it was such a success, so we wanted to try it again. Sultan wanted to try it again and extend it this time. However, this time we have reinforcements from JARI VÄHÄNEN, who is joining the panel to give us even more input on our ideas and thoughts. Otherwise, we should have, I don't know if ODETTE has joined yet, but ODETTE NESTOR from Romania. We have GUSTAF, HOFFSTEDT.
I'm here, MORTEN. Hi.
Oh, great, thanks. Thanks, ODETTE. Welcome.
Hi.
We have GUSTAF HOFFSTEDT from Sweden. We have MINNA RIPATTI from Finland. And we have LUDOVICO CALVI from Italy. So welcome to all of you. So I know that Sultan wants to keep this a bit sort of informal. So everybody is allowed to join in as they want. We need to try to keep a bit of order. So please let me know if you want to say something or if you want to have a question for our panelists. But otherwise, we'll try to keep it a bit loose for the next 1.5 hours. But I thought we should start out a bit soft and say what has happened since we spoke more than a month ago. Has there been any developments? I know that, in terms of the COVID-19, we're sort of the same place as we were a month ago. I think many countries are shutting down again now, and because the vaccinations are not really gone to a high level yet, there are many countries that are keeping the restrictions, and I know that affects sectors of the gambling industry as well, the lockdown. So maybe you can start, ODETTE, to say what's happened during the last month and how is it still affecting your industry?
I think, hello everybody, thank you for this invitation. What I think it's happened and is the most important in Romania, I got vaccinated yesterday, myself. And today I'm not very well, but I will try to stay with you all the time. What is new in Romania? Yesterday and before yesterday, I was to Parliament because we have in Parliament in this moment one draft of legislation. What is talking about land-based more? They want to put like limits square meters between church and school, and also between the land-based location. Also, in this draft of legislation, it's saying it is one article what is talking about the advertising, what nobody considered from the beginning that it's so important or so dangerous for our market, but now everybody is screaming and they don't know what to do. What is saying this article is saying that is not allowed to have advertising on the big dimension of banners. Nobody knows what means big, what means banners. It is very unclear, and also can be used by some authorities like to stop the advertising. How we know in this moment, 99% from the market, this kind of advertising on the street and also on the TV is made by the online part. So we are thinking, I was there, I discussed with some deputy, I tried to send to them and to tell them some arguments, the legal arguments that this law, if will be approved like this form, will be very dangerous. It is not fair for the business. We will see. In this moment, I am very positive. I'm waiting for them to see what they are deciding. It is the draft, it's already approved in the commission, and it's waiting just for be approved in the plan. So we'll see for the next feature what will be. I hope that will not be approved like this format. I propose to them also to put like a limit on the banner, if they want to put some limits, to put like a maximum 100 square meters for the banners. For the TV, we have already the limits. We can do it advertising after 11 o'clock in the night. So we are waiting to see what is happened for the next feature. Also in Romania, like previous time, is nothing changed like a political. Still, we are in the same situation. So it's nothing sure what will be for the next period. Also, exactly for the land-based location, what I told you, most of them are closed, and we are talking about lockdown also in Romania. Thank you.
And is there any talks about when to reopen the land-based sector, the shops again?
No, they are talking about lockdown now. They are not thinking about when will be open, because they closed town by town, not all the country. And now they are talking about lockdown in Bucharest. So nobody knows what will be and when will be next opening, to say.
Okay, well, thanks, Odetta. But at least you could go out now when you have the vaccine. And thank you for joining, even if you feel unwell. I hope it's not the AstraZeneca vaccine that you got. Then yeah, you have to be extra careful.
It's with Pfizer, but still I have some, I'm not feel so good, but we'll be okay.
Okay, great. Should we turn to Finland? Has there been any development since the report came out, and has there been any discussion about the future gambling market in Finland? Or maybe you can say something actually also about how COVID-19 has affected the gambling sector recently. I don't know who wants to go first, Jari or Minna. We should let the women come first, I think. So Minna, you are
because it's March.
Yes.
Okay, so hi everyone. So obviously the reform regarding the Lotteries Act, it's still pending. I believe we had the session, when was it? Was it in early January or was it February? Yes, so then in February, a round for comments was closed regarding the draft proposal, and now it's obviously still pending. We will see how things develop. The timeline looks like, it was in the past. So basically that the law would be submitted to the parliament in June, if everything goes as planned. Obviously, we have COVID here now, as Morten just said. So, there may be delays. COVID-wise, Finland is also planning to adopt, let's say, stricter measures now. The number of cases is increasing, although we have a rather good situation here in Finland. Still, there are talks now that the government would adapt, some measures to limit the movement of people and so on. Gambling wise, what else had happened before I will let Jari to speak. There was also a study on the effects of the diminished proceeds from the gambling activities that came out. It was, I believe, late February. So it was what should be done, placing the proceeds within the budget and the beneficiaries under the spending limits and so on. So there were also certain options introduced. But that's all from me regarding a short update. Maybe Jari has something to add here.
Yes, hello everybody. I could continue with the both issues a little bit there. First about business. So we got their numbers from last year, and the monopoly operator, my former employee, Veikkaus, has suffered a lot. They GGR went down more than 300 million euros last year, and according to estimation, that level will stay this year. So after the merger of three gambling operator from the beginning of 2017, the revenue has went down more than 400 million euros, and that wasn't the plan at all. So that will affect for sure of the overall general level discussion about the future of the monopoly and gambling system. But anyhow, I have some further unofficial information about the process of new gambling law. So they published the drafted law in January. Then there was a round where parties and ministers and beneficiaries could tell their opinion about the drafted law. And based on that, civil servants have rewritten the law quite a lot, I have heard. And then now there has been quite lively political debate around that legislation, and it has taken much more time than expected. But now, about 1 week ago, they managed to finalize the new version of the law in principle, and now they are writing that. And the plan is that Finland will start the European Union notification process during April. And the new law will go to Parliament after summer holiday season, which means early September. So they are still trying to get that law valid from beginning of next year. But there are quite many, I would say, interesting details in that law. And personally, although I'm not a lawyer at all, but personally, I think that there are quite big risk or opportunities that law won't pass the European Union notification process.
Jari, it's interesting that you say that that they've written the law, and I assume it's based because there's been criticism in the consultation process. And do we know what are some of those what that criticism is? And what about the banking sector? They must be very unhappy with the plans for payment blocking.
Yeah, that's the case for sure. Actually, that's really stupid part of the law, or when the plan is to introduce payment blocking here in Finland. And the idea is that the police board, the regulator of gambling business here in Finland, they will keep a so-called blacklist of the gambling operators, and they haven't defined precisely how companies will go to that blacklist, but it has said there in drafted law that if operators are having illegal marketing or sales actions here in Finland. But what are those illegal actions? For example, internet site in Finnish or emails sent to existing customers in Finnish, are they illegal actions? No one knows. And then we have that special case of PAF, the gambling operator from Åland. And of course, the same rules should be valid for PAF, but at the same time, Åland, it's how I would say, not independent area, but they have own legislation. They have also partly own gambling legislation. So it's really complicated story. And what you just asked about payment providers and banks, they have told that the extra cost caused by payment blocking will be about the same than extra revenue for Veikkaus. So it's really minor issue from overall picture point of view.
We're going to come back to payment blocking later in this panel, because that's something I want to discuss with you. But I think we should now turn to Italy, maybe, to hear from Ludovico what's happened in Italy since we spoke last time. I heard in the news that there's been lockdowns again in Italy, so I assume that's affecting the land-based industry at least.
Yes, thank you, Morten. Thank you all for having me. Absolutely. In January, we had a different government. So the new government came on, but basically the scenario is still the same. It's very gloomy, especially for the retail gaming business. Retail locations are closed. The association felt they've been discriminated when it came to deciding the reasons why other commercial locations have been open to the public. With all the restrictions in place, why would not gaming, betting locations be treated the same? So there's been heavy criticism when, you know, we had the other government at the beginning of January. Then the new government, Mario Draghi's government, took over, I would say over a month ago, and there were a lot of expectations. But then we had the new variants of the virus just taking over, and the lockdown measures have been extended up to the 4th of April, so after Easter. Now there are talks that this could be even extended to the beginning of May. So there is a lot of concern by license operators. They've been protesting and demonstrating just outside of the regulator's doors, and also just outside the parliament. 2 days ago, the head of the Italian regulatory body, Marcello Minenna, met with the unions and the leaders of the different gaming associations, qualifying the fact that it is a concern for the public authorities as well. There is a strong willingness to support the loss of revenues they've incurred now, I would say, for 7 to 8 months since March last year, because we only had a window in the summer. So it's been really hard. And the point there is that despite the millions of revenues lost, the subsidies by the governments are into the tens of thousands. So it's really very, very trivial and little support when it comes to what to do. Those gaming organizations who have been able to offset with the digital channel some of the revenues lost, they have done so. But that has not been enough because gaming organization, retail business have been losing between 50, 60 and 70% in several cases. The major cost in their P&L is the rent. So now the association and the regulator is trying to intervene on the level of the rent with the owners of these locations to make sure that at least part of that cost is offset, given that all these locations are closed. So there are a lot of actions left and right trying to really reduce the level of financial burden this organization are going through. At the same time, Morten, we are seeing certainly an increase in vaccination. The vaccination process has increased. We in certain regions are over half or even more than the over 80s. We felt and we have seen, we witnessed that wherever we have managed to vaccinate people, the virus is not circulating. So looking at what is happening in the US, and I was listening to Penn National CEO saying that in his casinos in the US, he has seen a very strong recovery in March, given to the fact that most of their target of consumers are over 65, and certainly 70 to 75% of them have been vaccinated in certain locations. They've seen a return back to business, which is very encouraging if I think of the physical location. So there is no other way than insisting on that pattern. While we expect the government to increase the subsidies, as we go along, and I personally expect something to happen in June, eventually, just a turnaround, where we will really see locations coming back to some form of normality because of the vaccine, because of the fact that it's warmer and people will be more outside than inside. So this is what I think will eventually happen.
Ludovico, please tell me about advertising. Is still not allowed to make advertising for gambling in Italy?
Yes, well, when it comes, as you can imagine, in the middle of a country with over 100,000 deaths, advertising ban is not on the top of the government agenda of that. And the other point I should make is that even though there is an advertising ban, but most of the digital gaming organizations have found a way to bypass it, simply. Very, very simply. What they've done, William Hill, rather than promoting William Hill, has been promoting William Hill News, which is everywhere to be seen in the stadia. The same would apply to many gaming organizations, as long as it's not really qualifying the betting services. You are basically supplying news that is allowed, and that is what everyone is doing, while you are actually bypassing a law and it is bringing you on a homepage, which is, yes, definitely news, but you can very easily access the betting and gaming platform. So I would no longer see that as a major I would say hurdle for the existing operators and licensed one in this country. Certainly it is a market entry issue for those who have been trying to acquire a license and have been trying to just acquire new customers and retain those customers. But those who have been already having a customer base, in a way or another, they've been able to communicate, as it is happening today.
Okay, thank you very much.
I wanted to ask you, Ludovico, there seems to be a bit of a paradox with the land-based industry, because I assume that for the government, one of the main purposes of having land-based gaming is to provide revenue to the state. And nevertheless, it doesn't seem like the government is doing much to support that industry, maybe not in terms of subsidies directly, but can you explain why the government is not more interested in reopening that sector to get a revenue stream for the state budget?
It's, I mean, as it may sound strange, if you look at logically, there are political issues. We are always there, Morten. Nothing has changed. There are certain parts of the Italian society which doesn't consider gaming a matter of priority. If I go backward, just traveling on memory lane, and why betting, for example, was legalized is precisely because we had a huge illegal gaming market. A right-wing government took over at the time, and it was decided that these activities had to bring value to the government revenues stream, and it did. Then, you know, I remember the finance police at the time was saying the illegal market is huge, huge. And then in the 10 years from year 2000 to 2010, we started to see from 2010 onwards criticism as, you know, if the government was being the bad guy because it's been generating a humongous mass of money. And they discovered, you know, the magnitude of the business. Then I remind everyone that we had a 90% illegal market 20 years ago, which went down up to 9% not even 3-4 years ago. So this is the journey we took. And then all of a sudden, this has become just a political flag to be shown. Let's not forget that we have the Vatican here. We had a very strong opposing party, which was the Five-Star Movement, which in the meantime has been losing momentum. So there is an opportunity here. But let's not forget that we are in the middle of a pandemic, and Italy was the first country to be hit in the last 12 months. And I can assure you that the last of the issue is the gaming industry. So I think this is the moment to really focus on getting the vaccination process undergoing real time to give the right answer. This government will be in power for another 12 to 16 months, in my opinion. This is a kind of is a coalition, multi-party government with the only objective of getting the vaccination process underway and deliver the recovery through the recovery plan by European Union. The other issues will be, in my opinion, not put on the same level when it comes to priority. So I would say that we will have an election in about 1.5 years, and then whoever is going to win will take this over. And whether it's a center-right or center-left, it may well make a difference. But from the time being, I would say that we will, you know, we as gaming executive and gaming stakeholders, we want to see the vaccination process well underway as fast as possible, because that is where the quick win lies.
Thanks a lot, Ludovico. As always, governments, they treat gambling a bit like the stepdaughter you never really wanted, but you have to live with. So, Gustav,
certainly not in the middle of a pandemic where, you know, you've got doctors, nurses trying to get more money, and they are saving lives. And then the next day you see all the gaming you know, stakeholders, families trying to protest, you know, facing the regulators and the government, and the public opinion is looking at this picture and say, well, wait a second, you've got doctors and nurses who are so badly paid, at the same time you've got these other guys. It's something which you know, puts everything into perspective.
It makes little sense indeed. Gustav, I want to get you on the panel now. So can you tell us a bit what's been happening in Sweden since we spoke last time, and if there's been any developments recently?
Well, thanks, Morten. For society in general, unfortunately, the vaccination process goes really, really slowly. I envy ODETTE from Romania that received her first shot the other day. In Sweden, if you are categorized as being young, then you have to wait until summer before you will receive your first shot of the vaccination. And I guess the positive thing about that, for me, for example, is that you are actually viewed upon as being young. But someone told me that, well, up to the age of 70, you are in that category. So most people are categorized as young, and the vaccination process is going really, really slowly. When it comes to the issue of gambling, yes, we've had a few developments, but most aspects that are connected to gambling is an ever going on process, like the temporary restrictions that the Swedish government imposed last year. We still suffer from them, and the main obstacle is a 5,000 Swedish krona deposit limit, a weekly deposit limit that has caused a lot of problems, not just for the gambling operators, but also for the consumers. The main impact of that particular restriction is that punters that used to have maybe 1 or 2 or maximum 3 operators that they turn to, nowadays they have expanded their accounts to numerous gambling operators to be able to gamble at the same volume as they used to. And an effect of that is, of course, that the operators, they become blind when it comes to the possibility to monitor for possible problem gambling. So one of the, if not the most important tool to use to detect problem gambling is more or less shut down during the COVID-19 thanks to this governmental measure.
Well, Gustav, I've seen that one of your members has challenged the government on this. Is it something that your trade association is involved in, or is it the operator alone doing this case?
Formally, they are alone. Of course, we sympathize and support their mission, but the initiative is taken by this individual operator. So this is one of the effects of the COVID-19, that the government is extremely eager to take new measures. When it comes to, I heard your interested discussion about land-based gambling, and in Sweden there is still a monopoly when it comes to land-based casinos. The state used to run 4 such land-based casinos in Sweden, but they shut down one of those casinos a few months ago. So now they are only operating 3 casinos, and all of them are temporarily shut down. This causes, of course, costs for the government anyway. Of course, the state-owned gambling operators, they have their revenue from other sources. But if they wouldn't, if the land-based casino would have been a separate part of it, with this situation, then Swedish taxpayers would have to subsidize land-based casino operators. And perhaps that is something that Swedish citizens do not view upon as a state core business to subsidize land-based casinos. I don't know. Anyway, this temporary shutdown of the land-based casinos has also caused a debate in society regarding an initiative that was taken by the CEO of those land-based casinos, namely that they wanted to expand not the number of places from where to operate, but they wanted to expand their business. So from a situation where they mainly offer casino products, they want to add, in a more Las Vegas way, musicals, concerts, shows, restaurants, etc., etc.
That's only Sweden where you can do that during Corona.
Yeah, well, they are actually temporarily shut down, but I assume that this is an initiative from the CEO to kind of save the land-based casinos, since Sweden, as well as your country, Morten, Denmark, are the two countries that have shifted from offline gambling to online gambling the fastest way. You know that more than 50% of the gambling in our two jurisdictions are nowadays online gambling. And I guess this is an effort or a try from the land-based operator to survive into a new era. But the problem, of course, is that since they are state-run and state-owned, it also opens up for the question, well, is this really something that the state shall run? Shall it run musicals and concerts and run restaurants and other things to attract the gamblers? Maybe that is something that is not included in the core business for a state that normally handles things like defense and law enforcement and important tasks like that. Lastly, if I just may mention, there is now, during the COVID-19 situation, an inquiry up and running in Sweden. We had this inquiry that suggested and at a later stage implemented the new licensing regime in Sweden. Unfortunately, we face a channelization issue. We have quite a large amount of leakage out of that licensing system that so recently was launched. And for that reason, the government launched an inquiry 1.5 years ago to hopefully solve that problem. It didn't. And therefore, it now, in December, it launched a second inquiry with more or less the same task, namely to, hunt down the unlicensed operators and to hopefully solve this channelization issue that Sweden faces. My own interpretation or thought about that is that, of course, I welcome any kind of measure towards unlicensed gambling, but I still hesitate whether this second, or perhaps in the future a third or a fourth inquiry, will solve the Swedish channelization problem. And the reason is that the Swedish government cannot accept fundamental consequences that you have to accept if you want to safeguard a high channelization. Thanks, Morten.
Well, thank you, Gustaf. State-run nightclubs, that's a novel concept there.
Indeed.
We'll come back to the remedies of safeguarding a market such as the Swedish market just in a moment. Just wanted to round off with the current situation in Denmark. I don't get the vaccine yet, as Gustaf. I only get the vaccine, I think, in June, which hopefully allows me still to go on vacation to Italy, Ludovico. So please make sure that it's open in mid-July. But let's see about that. There's currently, so the shops, the land-based shops are now open again after a long shutdown. So the land-based sector is really looking forward to that. I don't think the casinos are open yet though, but the land-based betting shops are open. But But the Danish government is planning a long list of restrictions on the gambling industry this year to be discussed in the spring or in the summer. So we are quite worried about what they might propose, because as some of you have heard, maybe the government recently increased the tax rate from 20% on GGR to 28%. And that has made the industry already quite difficult conditions for the industry. And we see as an effect, we see the black market is increasing. We see that a number of gambling operators, unlicensed gambling operators, are targeting the Danish market using Google AdWords and other things. So even more restrictive measures will, of course, impact the channeling rate quite drastically. So this is something to look out for. And that kind of leads me to the next area of discussion, because we all have our respective markets that are being protected, whether they are with open licensing or they're monopoly markets. We have markets that the governments are trying to protect from those illegal, unlicensed operators. And there are different ways of doing this. And I think it's safe to say that some measures are effective and some are definitely not. In Denmark, the government is trying to protect the market with having a blacklist where domains for gambling operators that are not licensed can be blocked by the internet service providers. And recently, the government blocked 55 websites. But of course, as we all know, for the gambler, it's quite easy to circumvent those blocks. You just need a VPN to use, and then you're free to go. But there are other measures to be used, and one of them is being discussed in Sweden right now. So maybe you can start, Gustav. That is supplier licensing, where you are supposed to buy licensing. The software supplier puts an obligation on the supplier not to supply to illegal gambling operators. And I think you have some thoughts about this and how that's going to work. But maybe you can tell us.
Well, thanks, Morten. As I said, it all starts with problematic channelization issue to start with. When it comes to online casino, we have a leakage of approximately 25%. So every fourth Swedish krona leaks out to the illegal market right now. And that is obviously not sustainable. So it's apparent for everyone that something has to be done. And there are, of course, a number of suggestions. You have all heard about them: B2B licensing, payment blocking, IP blocking, etc., etc. I usually am quite skeptic about those repressive measures for the reason that Morten just mentioned, namely that it's not that difficult to find a path around them for the punter. However, I do believe that supplier licenses may be an exception. And therefore, I, as well as my association, and my association represent both B2C operators, but also B2B suppliers. We have come to the conclusion that we are in favor of such system. I do not believe that Sweden is first. I believe that the UK already uses that system, and there are probably other jurisdictions that also use it. And the idea is, of course, that in the jurisdiction, in this case Sweden, the the B2B supplier shall only be allowed to sell its products and services to, in Sweden, licensed operators. And that could be a possible and functioning tool to safeguard a high channelization in that jurisdiction. I do not believe that this is the savior, that it will solve all problems, and I am keen on listening to all the brilliant minds among you today, both in the panel as well as people listening to this discussion. But until I hear some arguments that kill the idea, then I prefer to be slightly positive about such a licensing system. Of course, as always, the devil is in the details, and we intend to play a very active role in Sweden when the details in such system shall be implemented and discussed. But on a general level, we are positive about it, and almost all stakeholders in Sweden are in fact positive. So it is very likely that Sweden will have such system up and running in 1 or 2 years. May I, Morten? You had a question, Morten.
Yeah, because I have to ask you, Gustav, because I understand that everybody is in principle happy with B2B licensing. Maybe the suppliers are not actually happy, but they accept it as a fact. But I'm surprised that if your suppliers are happy with how that proposal from Sweden is made, because as far as the way I see it, there's absolutely no upsides for the suppliers in that proposal that the Swedish government is looking at. There's no reduction of administrative burden. There's no direct communication with the regulator. There's basically just an obligation and liability that follows, and that's it. And then you have to pay some money to get the license. So I just don't understand if they're happy with that. Sorry for the very direct question here.
I believe it's crucial for the B2B suppliers to be viewed upon as the serious businesses they are, and a lot of those suppliers they do in fact have a Swedish heritage. Today they are criticized heavily for selling their products and services to the unlicensed market, and that's among all other problems, it's an investor relations problem. So they are in need of some kind of guidance, clear guidance, who to sell their products to and who to not sell their products to. And a system, a B2B licensing system, could be that kind of guidance for the B2B suppliers. And also, I mean, yes, we suffer from a leakage, but the main part of the industry is, of course, licensed operators. And the licensed operators are increasingly getting frustrated over suppliers that sell their products to unlicensed operators. I believe that from both those parties, the B2Cs and B2Bs, a B2B licensing could also contribute to a healthier relation between B2Cs and B2Bs. And that is where sustainability is, also when it comes to investor relations.
Yeah, Ludovico has.
Sorry, if I can jump in. This is a major. Thank you, Gustav. I feel that while the world is moving towards a more regulating environment, and governments are more and more regulating, and giving incentive in terms of taxation to create the conditions for sustainability when it comes to fiscal, cost of operations, cost of license, and so on. I think what Gustav is explaining is a very natural trend. If the value of GGR worldwide is catching up with what is being generated by unlicensed operators, or let's say this is the trend, where are we going to be between 3 and 5 years or in 7 years? So I think it's, for public authorities, but also for gaming organization executive, it's important to plan their position ahead. Where is the industry going to be in 5 years? Where do we want to be? And I think what Gustav is explaining, again, is a natural trend on the regulatory side, but also, with all due respect to the comment which was made that this is communist, private organizations should not be told who to sell their services to. We are selling a public service through a licensing model. And if this is the trend worldwide, we need to be prepared to the fact that we need to adapt to have that value, which is intangible value of transparency and the way the public is seen as an industry. And that is not only to create value for the investors and the shareholders, but also when it comes to get a license in a country and you have a certain background and a certain story. So I would consider that a natural trend. A B2B licensing model is something which, if it is proved to be even at 70–80% successful, certainly something which other regulators will be looking at.
I want to say also, sorry, Morten, I want to say some things. In Romania, we have also B2B licensed from the beginning when we regulated the online market. I can say that from my point of view, when I was in the position, I feel it that all these tools, also this licensed B2B, blacklist and many others, together help the government to stop the market, the black market. Really, we make like a pilot, and we understand that this was working together. Okay, maybe for a period, maybe for the next feature will come another option. Maybe they will find another solution to avoid the legislation and to find the way. But in this moment, what can I say also from my experience in other countries, the serious B2B operators, they are asking the partners, we are asking about the license. So even is not imposed, even is not forced by the law, we are asking about the license just to protect the license and to protect also the company. So this will for the future, I think, will be like a procedure for each serious B2B software provider or B2B company.
Well, thank you, Odetta. Gustav said something that, he says that B2B suppliers have to be treated like an equal partner, which I absolutely believe is true, but I don't think it's the case in many countries. I think, and I see the countries where B2Bs are being regulated or being licensed, it seems as just, a way of protecting the market rather than accepting the status and the importance of the software supplier who actually makes the games, who could, with a dialogue with the regulator, make better games and more responsible games. And that is not the case, except maybe for the UK, where there's an actual dialogue between the regulator and the B2B suppliers. Is that something you have any thoughts on? Because I know, Odetta, you have B2B licensing in Romania. I don't know much about it, but I don't think there is much communication with the regulator and the supplier. Maybe I'm wrong, and the same for Italy, perhaps, but let me know if I'm wrong.
In Romania, in this moment, okay, the things are changing. Again, from my experience, I can tell you this depends by the person. who is in position in the moment when you asking this communication. I don't want to say that from my period, everything was right and everything was okay. But I can say for Romania market, 5 years when I was in the position, my door was open for everybody. And I think maybe we have also in the panel some operators what, came to us, even stay in our office 8-9 hours just to discuss about the legislation, to explain to them what we expect from the operators, what we are thinking to do, what we have in the, why we want to do this. So this was the behavior in Romania before. After me, and this I can do it because I had the experience from the market. But the position of the National Gambling Office is the political one. And after me came other people who are political persons. So I cannot to ask them to be so open to receive somebody, to receive some operators to talk about technical part, to talk about software, to talk about very deep things, and he cannot understand even what it means gambling. This is the problem. I think the problem it is the person who is in position, and it's not depends by the authority, like total authority, it's open or not, or like a behavior on this. MGA also, when I was in a position, Joe Cruschieri I feel it from his part and from his authority, very open behavior with everybody. I feel it is, and they support us a lot.
If I can say something, Morten, to reply to you. Well, first of all, suppliers as well as operators have realized that if they have a license or they are certified, they need to sit, they are allowed to sit at the same table with the regulators. And they need to solve the main issue of unlicensed GGR being generated. And that's a part of the pie which is going somewhere else, which they would at the same level of the government and the regulator to be part of. So there is a convergence of interest, and this is what we need to stress. Do we want more and more unlicensed GGR being generated? Is that in the interest of A, the licensed operators, B, the certified or licensed B2B suppliers? Well, certainly not. And this is what has been happening. In recent times, you've seen more and more cooperations between public authorities, regulatory bodies, sitting on the same table and say, okay, how can we reduce the percentage of GGR generated illegally? And this is the real point. And that's why they've been trying to find solutions. We have seen the PricewaterhouseCoopers study claiming that the illegal revenue generated in the last 24 months has been doubled in the UK. And even though that it's still a small percentage, between 2.4, 2.5%, but we're talking about billions. So I think this is one part. If we don't see this part, we don't acknowledge where the industry is going. Now, when we look at Italy, Italy has certainly got a certification for B2B suppliers. So your games have to be, your main system has to be certified so that you can actually qualify and send transactions through a communication protocol, which is been consolidated now for years. And whenever there is an update on that communication protocol, all the B2B suppliers are informed that they need to upgrade their platform. And then all the games, the casino, the poker games, are actually approved by the Italian authorities. So there is a cooperation when it comes to what to offer, to who to offer. And I've seen also situations where the Italian authority has raised the red flag and mentioned to one of the supplier, look, you cannot supply these guys who are really borderline. So there is internal conversation, and that is precisely let's say the sharing of objectives and solutions, which we have seen in recent years.
Well, thank you, Ludovico. We have a comment from Zoltan in the comments here. He says, that the government telling a private company who to sell their service is communism, in my opinion. And I guess Zoltan must know, because he's from a country where communism is not so far away. What do you think about that?
Well, if I can start, Morten, I disagree with Zoltan this time, although he's a great guy. And the main advocacy is that it's not unusual that you license any kind of business. My doctor is licensed. It's not communism to license doctors. And my bank is licensed, and my insurance company is licensed. It is, in fact, an important task for the state to regulate markets. The opposite of communism is not the Wild West. A functioning market economy is in need of regulation. But with regulation comes, of course, the possibility of bad regulation. Of course, a Swedish B2B licensing system may be a failure. But that doesn't tell us that we on a general level are against regulations, or we are just against the ones that are not in function, the ones that do not function. And I suppose perhaps you, Morten, also are against B2B licensing, but if you are, I suggest that you change your mind to be against bad B2B licensing. You and I, Morten, are of course pro B2C licensing, and at the same time we can point at a number of elements within B2C licensing that are failures, but that doesn't change the fact that on a general level we are in favor of regulating business to consumer. And I do believe that we should also be in favor of B2B licensing, and then play a very active role in the development of the details of such regulation. Now, when I have the word, I would also like to stress that all those restrictive measures that are always discussed, B2B licensing, IP blocking, payment blocking, etc., the main problem with all those restrictive measures is that the most important measure to safeguard a functioning licensing system is the opposite, namely that governments and authorities must accept the fact that the operators, the licensed operators, must be able to offer attractive gambling offers to the consumers within the licensing system. And the problem with all those restrictive measures is that governments are always tempted to increase the pressure on licensed operators, thanks to the measures that they take upon unlicensed gambling. And that is probably the main reason for the channelization failure that most jurisdictions face. Denmark, your country, Morten, will soon, if it's not already launched, increase its taxation to 29%, I believe it is. Such measure will have a draconical impact on the channelization, and such decision is much more important compared to a B2B licensing system, for example. So any kind of legislator and regulator, they have to start with offering the consumers an attractive offering within the licensing system. And only after that, you can, on top of that, add a few clever restrictive measures to also safeguard the licensing system. The problem with most European jurisdictions is that governments do not care about the first and the most important task, the attractiveness in the licensing system. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Gustav. I agree with all of that. And I just wanted to clarify, I'm not against B2B licensing as such. I just think that what has been proposed in Sweden is bad regulation.
Morten, if I can, just 1 minute and I close this. So about license B2B, I agree for 100% for this. And I tell you why. What was the strategy, for example, when we think about this to legalize and to put in this way? In Romania, we have also the auditors to have, they need to have a license class 2. The certificate, the company, they need to have. So everybody, but was the strategy from the beginning this, and this is working. Because, you know, what government is doing, all these restrictions, all these tools, what government took on the legislation are just to stop the bad guys. So the legislation, the restriction are not for the good guys. This why I tell you from my experience that the operators, the serious operators, they have nothing against all on this license, because in Romania also for class 2 the price is very low. We put it's 6,000 euro per year. It's not about the price, it was just to have the tools. If one operators want to crash the law, we have the tools for all the partner from this market. So to close, so if you have not the license for B2B, the government, the authority have not rights to go against to this company. So they need to punish just the operators. So they need to have the rights also against to other partners what are in this circle. So this why we have the license for all of them. Also for payments processors, also for everybody, we try to, for all the suppliers to impose them to have the license, not because of the restriction and or to block the market or to be something bad for the good operators, just to have the tools against on the bad operators what wants to break on the law.
Well, the Dutch authorities, the Dutch government seems to have found a way to punish the illegal operators without touching the B2B suppliers, because they say to the operators, well, it's your responsibility that your suppliers are not supplying to the black market. So we don't need to touch the suppliers. That seems to be a very unfair way, in my opinion. And I'm sure most of you would agree. I have a sneaky question for the Finns. And if you don't want to respond, then it's fine. But we're talking about suppliers, and I have an observation that in the two countries, the two only countries where there's still a monopoly in Norway and in Finland, it doesn't seem to be a topic. What about these suppliers who are supplying to the national lottery and to all of the illegal operators? So it's never being discussed. What should we do? And my feeling is that it's very important not to restrict the supply to the national lottery, rather than shutting off those suppliers who supply to all of the illegal operators.
Maybe I could start, because I used to work there in a monopoly company with so many years, and I have been involved in those discussions and negotiations with suppliers. So what we did there those days when I was there was that according to agreement with the suppliers, they just promised that they are not going to have any role in other businesses where operators are targeting Finnish customers. But what it means in practice, there is no definition about that. But I would say that it would be restrictions of normal business if there would be limitation or restrictions for suppliers not to have customers from, let's say, from private sector who are using their systems, if those companies don't have official business here in Finland.
But isn't that a double standard, Jari? because Vicos, they could just develop their own games. They don't need to have games from other suppliers who are then also supplying to the black market.
Actually, they are developing own games just partly. It's I would say from let's say online casino games, games developed in house is something like few %. So at the moment, Veikkaus is using games from more than 5 or even 10 suppliers. They have IT systems from many different suppliers. So I would say that in practice, Veikkaus is acting like whatever business-oriented gambling operator, or used to be like that, not during last 1-2 years, but before that.
Exactly.
Obviously, they have to keep their offer attractive as well. So, you know, and definitely the situation is in Finland, it's interesting, but yeah, I don't really have anything to add. And I think Jari has better insight regarding the practices of Veikkaus here. Regarding B2B licensing as such, I don't think we are there in Finland yet. We have a monopoly, and the first step would be obviously with the B2C. We are more concentrating on possibly introducing those PSP blocking measures.
Okay, thank you, Minna. Let's, as maybe the last topic of this this session, if we don't get around to more, is to talk about payment blocking and banks in general. So we talked about all of us in a pre-session. We talked about how increasingly difficult it's become to be using the banking sector for gambling operators, and how many gambling operators face that they are just being shut off from getting a bank account. So this ecosystem doesn't seem to work anymore. But maybe you do understand banks, because they are taking a risk, and then they're also told in some countries now, well, you have to block for payments to the gambling industry. And why should they take all the trouble of doing anti-money laundering measures and blocking payments? So what is the solution to this? Because can the gambling industry really continue to work without a banking connection? Is there another option? I don't know who wants to go first on this.
Well, I can start, Morten, if you're fine with that. Of course, the gambling industry will find another path should it be impossible in the future to cooperate with the normal banks. But if we can avoid such situation to occur, then we should try our hardest to do so. The gambling industry and the banks, they have cooperated for decades, and I can't see any reason why they shouldn't do that in the future as well. Right now, the relation between the gambling industry and the banks is tensed due to what you just mentioned, Morten. Of course, well, the banks, at least in the Nordic countries, they have faced some tough years when it comes to AML measures, and in the media, Danish, Finnish, and Swedish banks have been, well, they have had a rough time in media, and a few CEOs were forced to resign due to lack of AML measures. But I don't think it's fair to shuffle over the problems that were created within the banks towards the gambling industry. After all, it used to be a functioning relation when the gambling operators did not operate with a local license. The problem, Morten, that you mentioned now, that the banks are kind of withdrawing from the gambling sector in general, has appeared in jurisdictions such as my own, when we have a national licensing system. And the banks, they are so important with the services that they provide. For example, in Sweden, we have a payment solution called Swish. And this payment solution is so popular, especially among new gamblers, that approximately 75% of all new gamblers use that kind of payment solution. And if you do not have a normal bank service as a gambling operator, then you do not have the possibility to offer that payment solution, the Swish solution. And since 75% of the punters, they want to use that system, then it's close to impossible to operate on that market. And the consequence of that is that the decisions made by the Swedish Gambling Authority, whether to hand out a national license or not, those decisions may not be the most important ones in the future, whether to operate on that national market or not. The decision to be able to operate on that national market may in the future be taken by 3-4 big banks rather than governmental authorities. And that is a situation we don't want to face. We believe that we spoke about the importance of the regulation previously, and I am a defender of governmental regulations as such. And I don't think that we shall privatize the licensing regime to Danske Bank and Swedbank and SEB Bank. That is something that still shall be maintained by Swedish authorities. So I am very much against a general withdrawal from the gambling market. Of course, all banks shall investigate gambling operators individually, and all gambling operators must reach a high level of AML measures, etc., etc. But we are choosing a very dangerous path should we or should the banks decide to withdraw from the industry as such. The only beneficiary of that would be unlicensed operators that would gain yet another market share should that happen.
If I can jump in, Morten, here to Gustav, I think we need to again step back a little bit and try to understand why this is happening. So there are two elements, in my opinion. The first one is related to the cost of anti-money laundering procedures, which the banks are forced to follow. And the objective there is, where can I open a commercial account to an operator or to a business which has lower risks, and it's actually cheaper for me to run rather than continuing with the gaming. There is the rating for the banks. The European Central Bank is actually coming strongly on the type of guarantees they are prepared to give to banks. The smaller the banks sometimes lower the rating. Why? Because they've been taking anything they possibly can, and sometimes anti-money laundering measures have not been enforced as they should. So, and the other thing, actually the other thing is the moral, the ethical question banks are asking themselves: do we still want to be in this sector, which is really easily infiltrated or could be easily infiltrated. And these elements are bringing the banks, especially in my country, to really come to a kind of a war against the gaming sector. We have seen many gaming organizations, but also politicians trying to protect licensed gaming organizations. The gaming sector is really undergoing an objective and intolerable obstacle represented by the Italian banking system, not only to the operations of the companies itself when it comes to license operators, whether they are B2B, B2C, and so on, but also an obstacle when it comes to the very function of protecting and preventing the money laundering process. And therefore, even if you are a small bank somewhere in a province, you are there to protect those who are doing business with the state. So you cannot close commercial accounts, because those commercial accounts are also used to pay tax to the state. So there is now, we are getting to the point where we either go in the direction GUSTAF was representing. I am the biggest bank in the Italian market, and I can be creating the scalability level for managing costs, keeping the rating the ECB wants, and therefore I can actually collect all gaming accounts, well, gaming organization commercial accounts, and deal with that. But the risk is obviously having one or two major banks dealing with it, which I'm not in favor of. But we need to see where we are heading. We are heading towards a European Union, which is more and more putting pressure on banks. But here again, the state and the regulatory authority have to intervene and make it quite clear that protecting licensed businesses, whether they are banking, whether they are any other licensed business, is in their DNA, and we need to safeguard and protect the license and the legality of the system. And banks are there for a function, which is key to that. And that cannot be ignored, because when a licensed operator signs a license, in that license in Italy, you've got safeguarding measures which the state has to guarantee. And among those measures are the banking services by the banks, which they could lose a license if they don't deliver. So this is the point we are actually getting to.
Thank you, Ludovico. I noticed that you and GUSTAF are in favor of sort of regulation, but I think you make it sound a bit easy, because these are private entities, and usually the principle of markets is that you're allowed to take which customers you want. The gambling company would say the same. I want this customer, but I don't want this one. And basically what you are saying is that the government should decide, well, you have to take gambling operators as customers on board.
No, I'm saying something else. I'm saying you cannot close a commercial account by a gaming organization because you feel that the costs are too high and there is an ethical issue. Because if there is an ethical issue, the state is actually the issue, because the state is promoting licensed gaming. So you cannot refuse that. And you need to provide enough information to allow the state to say, well, I understand this commercial account is used to pay tax, Morten, to pay tax to the state. Why are you closing this account? Oh, because this is not ethical. Doesn't make sense. And there is an issue. And you need to have also, as a banking system, licenses within which you need to boundaries where you can move, where you cannot move. Because if the ECB can do that, the state should be able to do it. So I think we need to create a win-win situation, which at the moment is not there. But it's been there for decades. That's what GUSTAF said. It's been there for decades. Why is this happening? Why? Because the anti-money laundering measures have been increasing, because we are in a digital era, and because we need changes. You cannot live in a digital era where, you know, the whole world is changing and you want to stick to what is better for you.
my experience, though, I want to say, working with a number of operators who are getting licenses in Denmark and Sweden, is that the bank will not say why it doesn't want you as a customer. They will just say, well, based on a general assessment, we cannot offer you your account. So you don't know if it's ethical, is it AML, is it because they're not earning enough money, which could be something too. So you never get an explanation. It's just no, thank you. And I think that's quite difficult to deal with.
I agree, Morten. Even if, or in particular, perhaps when banks are taking decisions that we disagree with, we would highly appreciate their being transparent and their advocacy for that decision. Right now, it's not just the fact that they are withdrawing from the sector as such, but also without any clear messages. And without being clear in the message, it is truly difficult to challenge those measures taken by the banks.
We have approximately 4 minutes left for us to round up, so it has to be really short. Maybe we should go to you, Odetta. You didn't say anything about this topic. How's the relationship with the banks and the gambling industry in Romania at the moment? You have to turn on the microphone, Odetta.
Sorry. In Romania, it is a very big fight about this issue. I was also on the TV. I was talking with everybody, with ministry, with national bank, with all the banks. I have the answer on the right, on the paper from the banks, what they are saying, that you need to transfer your money from your bank account until next month, and it's all. And I try to find out what is happened and to find the reason, like you said also. Unofficial, they are saying that it's activity with risk, and they don't want to take the risk. Non-official, they told me that National Bank, they are asking them to not open anymore and to close the actual bank accounts. It's amazing what has happened. In the end, what I can do it, just to ask to some banks to try to take the risk, because if we analyze between us the risk in this market for online, it's very small comparing with any other activities. And this I try to explain to them. We have the authorities, we have the license in Romania, we have regulated market. Why is this behavior? But in the end, what achieve? I try and I convince two banks to take this risk and to open the bank accounts for the online, for the online operators. I'm not talking about the land-based. And they will ask, one of them, they will ask like an audit for money laundering. I don't know what will be this. Really, I don't know. Maybe they will ask audit for platform and how we have the procedure for money laundering. I don't know how will be. And the second one, they said that they will ask big commission because the expenses, like Ludovico said, the expenses for AML are increased a lot, and they cannot to cover from the operators to cover this kind of cost. So even with this, we agree just to have a solution to give us the right to operate in Romania. More than this, in Romania, in the legislation, we have operators have the obligation to have the balance of the players in the bank who is established in Romania. So it's more harder than this. So if you have not bank accounts in Romania, you cannot operate in Romania. But I hope in the next feature we will solve this. We have already two solutions. I hope that the others will take like an example to not lose the money from this market.
Thank you a lot, Odetta. And personally, I am waiting for that bank, that big European bank that comes along and say, we'll take gambling customers. We can manage the risk. we can do this. There must be a business opportunity there for a bank or two. So let's hope that's going to happen. We've come to the end of this session, and as usually, I only exhausted half of the things I had on my paper, and it's because you all had very interesting and insightful input. So thank you a lot for this. And then I want to say that we should ask Sultan to set up this conference again in person sometime in October or September, whenever it's possible. And hopefully we can meet all for a drink in the bar afterwards. So thank you everyone for participating in this panel, and be safe out there.
Thank you, Morten.
Thank you very much, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Communist Gustav. Now, Morten, I have bad news for you. We will not do any live events this year. So not a hybrid one either, because it's even harder to set it up as it was last year.
I'm optimistical. Maybe I will arrange something in Romania from our association in the somewhere October, November. I hope so. All of us will be vaccinated and we can do it to meet each other.
Okay, guys. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Be safe, guys.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so don't forget to join us for the next quarterly meetup, which is on April 8th. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely day.
Bye.